I like to work on it with spirit before. So I'm going to do something a little different about Valentine's Day. It's not going to be the usual, let's exchange candy. Okay? So let's begin. Since today is February 14th, I thought it would be appropriate to speak about love, but not the usual love that most people are familiar with, as, for example, romantic love. Nor do I wish to talk about giving out presents for Valentine's Day. Like Christmas and so many other holidays, Valentine's Day has been highly commercialized. Instead, I would like to talk about love from a spiritual perspective, what it is, and how it is connected with wisdom. I will begin with a Christian perspective, then turn to a Hindu perspective, and in closing, we'll tie the two perspectives together. In Corinthians, it is written, "And now abideth faith, hope, charity, these three. But the greatest of these is charity." In this case, the King James Version of the Bible uses the word charity in place of the word love. Here, charity means love, kindness, and tolerance in judging others, something that the world is in dire need of today. The word charity was first used during medieval times, during the 1200s. At that time, it meant benevolent goodwill towards others or love of humanity. The word charity was derived from the Latin phrase caritas, meaning Christian love. It is also related to the old Irish word cari, which means friend, and the Sanskrit word kama, which also means love. Today, most biblical translations use the word love instead of charity. Let's look at this biblical phrase more closely. "And now abideth faith, hope, charity." Faith is complete trust in one's religion as well as in God, whatever form the concept of God takes for the individual. For many years, faith usually meant complete trust and loyalty to the God of the Bible. But I have faith that in today's world, this concept can be applied to all religions and their differences and concepts of God. Hope suggests that even if one's desired outcome is not guaranteed, there is somehow the assurance that things will turn out all right. Hope is kind of like a light shining in the darkness, reminding us to keep our spirits up, as all is not as chaotic and unpredictable as it may seem. Hope helps us to sustain faith. That which is greater than us all is indeed in control. How many times when things didn't work out as planned have you heard spiritualists or other people of other faiths say something like, "It's all good, Spirit is in control," or "It's God's will," or "The gods know what they are doing"? These are all examples of faith and hope that put order into the chaos that life constantly brings us. But charity, let's call it love. Why is it the greatest of these three things, faith, hope, love? This phrase about love that we have been talking about, it is part of the letter sent to by St. Paul to his disciples. However, it is preceded by the following description of what is love. Love is patient, love is kind. Patience and kindness, even when it seems it is undeserved, perhaps when it feels it is most undeserved, is a demonstration of love. Patience can be found by understanding on at least some level what the other person is feeling, thinking, and thereby working with them in order to help them. In other words, together, working in tandem, Patience and kindness is love. A tiger patiently waiting for prey to walk by is not a particularly good example of love. It is perhaps an example of opportunism, the betterment of oneself at the ultimate price of another being. But love wants to help others without expectation of gain, without attachment to the outcome. In this way, it is a reflection of God's love for all of humanity. Love does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. Love cares not what others have, but cares instead about connecting with God. One way to do this is through gracious acts towards others. What an individual does indeed matter to all of us. Nothing happens in isolation. In other words, our actions, thoughts, and emotions are their own reward. They should be done for the sake of doing them and not for some imagined award. For even the smallest gesture can be a reflection of the heavens. Envying what others have may lead to the accumulation of material things like status, money, power, etc. These kinds of materialist things never lead to happiness. Likewise, boasting about one has because of false pride and an overinflated ego demonstrates that one's priorities are oriented towards the material. Such behavior never bears spiritual treasures that you can take with you when it is time to transition. Actually, one could become so attached to material items that one cannot let go even after the physical body ceases. For example, ghosts. The kind of ghosts that hang around the earth not wanting or not able to move on to a better place. One of the reasons for this is that they cannot part with the physical world. That is how attached they have become to material things. Love does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrong. Love is not concerned with pointing out the faults of others. It is far better to worry about one's own weaknesses, seeking always to correct them, to outgrow them, thereby maturing in wisdom and understanding. Know thyself is a wonderful lifetime practice. It encourages people to start making the world a better place by observing one's own actions, thoughts, beliefs, emotions. Instead of becoming easily angered and keeping track of other people's faults, happiness is much more likely to be found by practicing patience, appreciating the good in others, seeing the glass as half full and not as half empty. Anger is something that arises out of frustration and a lack of patience. Nothing is ever solved when the emotions are too strong to think clearly. Yes, oftentimes while on earth, frustrating situations present themselves to us with the inevitable anger that follows. But anger is a kind of attachment that holds us back. It rules us and guides us into unhappy conditions. On the other hand, if every time something frustrates or angers us, we would only allow ourselves to be angry for a short while, but then make it a point to let go and move on, the following could happen. 1, we begin to understand the situation. 2, we develop self-mastery. 3, negative experiences become lifetime learning opportunities, even the overwhelmingly negative ones. 4, we begin to understand the world better. 5, we develop patience and kindness. 6, we develop understanding. 7, we experience peace and joy. 8, we grow in wisdom and learn to love. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Love is the truth that will set one free. It is true that there is more to life than career, family, relationships, material ownership of things like cars, houses, jewelry, money, status, etc. This world we perceive is by no means the only world. The other worlds are all around us. Our physical bodies filter out these other realities and worlds in order that we can better focus on our life's purpose. But by quieting the mind, by practicing patience, especially with one's own self, and by asking for a higher guidance, you will be amazed at how lovingly Spirit will answer your prayers and requests. For Spirit loves us and does not want darkness and confusion to rule the planet. Spirit always protects, provides us trust, gives us hope, and never gives up on us. Spirit, like love, never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. Making predictions, talking in tongues, accumulating knowledge, even mediumship and trance, etc. All of these things are subject to time. They come and they go. Listening to predictions made by astrologers, psychics, scientists is based on statistics and other forms of scientific research. Politicians, clergy, and all types of pundits. Such predictions may be quite sensationalistic. They can also be very interesting and impressive. But like all things of earth, without love, they mean very little from a cosmic perspective. The same may be said about talking in tongues, mediumship, and trance. Even the accumulation of knowledge, whether it be book knowledge, job experience, knowledge changes as time goes on. Excuse me. For example, first we thought that the sun and the entire universe revolved around the earth. But now we know that the earth revolves around the sun is part of a rotating galaxy, our galaxy is part of the Milky Way. Our galaxy is the Milky Way, and it is only one of 200 billion to 2 trillion galaxies in our universe. In fact, there may even be multi-universes. Knowledge is not wisdom. It may be related to wisdom, but it is not wisdom. Knowledge is simply knowing, and it is tied into memory. Anyone can accumulate knowledge through studying, researching, and memorizing. Knowledge is subject to time and does not last. But wisdom is an intangible quality gained by living here on earth. We grow in wisdom by literally working through the elements, earth, water, fire, and air. Earth representing the physical aspects of our existence, water the emotional, fire representing inspiration and the cleansing of illusions, and air as mind or spirit. But not the everyday sense of mind, but mind as in spirit with a capital S, and not spirit that refers to disincarnate beings, like when we receive spirit messages in church or when we talk with grandma in a dream. No, spirit. Spirit refers to things like chi, pranayama, the Hebraic use of breath, the great light that infuses the sun with light, the great source of all that was, is, and will be. Great Spirit, Holy Spirit, the great I am. This is wisdom, an indescribable quality that is tightly interconnected to love. Love leads to wisdom, and wisdom to love. Love and wisdom last. For we know in part, and we prophesize in part, but when completeness comes, what in part disappears. Making predictions, talking in tongues, accumulating knowledge, even mediumship and trance are only part of the truth. or in other words, only part of reality, only a part of that which is greater than us all, the immensities, the cosmos, the overriding wordless I am that I am. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. The word philosophy can be broken down into philo and Sophie. Philo means love of, and Sophie means wisdom. Therefore, philosophy means love of wisdom. Here is that word love again, connected with its mate wisdom. It is no wonder that love and wisdom are so closely connected to each other. Wisdom leads to love, and one cannot help but love when one is wise. But for love and wisdom to develop, we must provide the proper conditions. These conditions include the elements earth, water, fire, and air. Earth is the ground where the lotus sends its root system. Water is what the young lotus plant must work through before bursting through and into the air with the fire of the sun to continue feeding it in amounts just enough to energize it and allow it to follow the sun throughout the day, but not so much that the lotus is overwhelmed and wilts and dies. Earth represents the material experiences of the earth represents the material experiences of earth. Water, the emotional. Fire is like inspiration at once burning away what we no longer need while feeding us energy to grow upwards towards spirit, towards the sun. Air is the mind, pure mind. For now, we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. It is the immature consciousness that is limiting to experiencing the world as a reflection in the mirror, seeing only part of the great what was, what is now, and what will be forever. The consciousness that has matured through the practice of philosophical endeavor fully knows its own self and thereby begins to have hope that he or she begins to know God, the immensities, the cosmos. As the great Socrates once said, it is better to love and not be loved than to be loved and not love. Hinduism also talks about love. And although I do not know nearly as much as I would like to know about the ways of higher love via wisdom, via Hinduism, I do feel I can share a bit of what I am in the process of learning. My apologies in advance to my Hindu friends should I mispronounce certain words in my efforts. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna states, being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many, many persons in the past became purified by my knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. Here, Krishna describes how fear and anger are forms of attachment in our material world. Fear and anger are nasty distractions that keep us from experiencing the spiritual aspects of life. In Sanskrit, the word Krishna is Krish, or it's spelled K-R-S-H, which when translated means to draw or pull in, to draw to oneself. In other words, Krishna is saying that by quieting oneself and going deep within our own selves, we can transcend the spirit, the material aspects of life on earth. But we must not allow ourselves to be ruled by fear and anger, for such things will not allow us to go within. Once we turn within, we begin to understand Krishna and his teachings. And in this way, our love for Krishna leads us in transcending this world in such a way that we grow conscious of other realities. This is transcendental love, love that cuts across the relatively shallow dimensions of the earth experience. Life is no longer experienced as a four-dimensional world of length, width, height, and time, i.e. materialism. Life is now experienced in more than four dimensions. In this way, we are guided towards the great light of wisdom and love. By practicing non-attachment, our love grows not for the material things of life, but for that which is greater than us, that which transcends this world and is made of light. The light of Krishna guides us in this direction. Krishna continues, not by study of the Vedas, nor by an austere life, nor through gift-giving, nor through ritual offerings can I be seen in such a way as you have seen me directly within. The Vedas are ancient Hindu holy scriptures going back to about 1500 to 900 BCE, or about 3,500 years ago, 3,500 years ago. Simply studying the Vedas will not lead to love, wisdom, and spiritual freedom. For example, we all know people who are very smart, very educated to the point that others feel insufficient around them. Such people have always had an answer to everything, even if it means using complicated and intimidating vocabulary. When talking to such types, one cannot find any flaws in their arguments, and yet, deep inside, something tells us that something is missing. And indeed, there is something missing, because in spite of all their education, they have not reached deep within to listen to the small voice that is bigger than Mount Everest. They are, in short, missing a developed emotional life that, when combined with experience and learning, balances out to produce wisdom and love. This same principle applies to those living an austere life. There is more to spiritual life than being serious all the time. Life must be balanced with a more cheerful outlook and the practice of looking within. Gift-giving is a kind and worthy venture, but that too can get out of hand. Look at how materialistic Christmas and Valentine's Day has become. The materiality of gift-giving can become imbalanced if it is not balanced with spiritual activities. The same is true of ritualistic offerings. Something else is required, something subtle, something directed deeply inward while upwardly focused. Studying holy scriptures, austerities, giving presents, ritualistic offerings, one can become attached to such things. This attachment is distracting and will stand in the way of the inward focus required to focus upwards and towards the heaven. Krishna goes on, only by undistracted love can men see me and know me and enter into me. Undistracted love. In order to be undistracted, one must be unattached to the outward material things of life. The outcome does not matter. What matters is the going through the process of living life while remaining focused and aware of that small voice that points one in the direction of spirit. We're working through the four elements of earth, water, fire, and towards air, i.e. spirit. To many in the Western tradition, Lord Shiva is known as the Hindu god of destruction. But in the Hindu tradition, he is much more multi-dimensional than that. In fact, he has a very gentle and loving side that, unfortunately, the West knows little about. It is his gentle and loving qualities that I find so beautiful and attractive. As such, I would love, if I may use that word, to share with you some poetry from Tamil Nadu, which is southeastern India. Forgive me if I cannot tell you more about the origin of the following poem, for I am just in the beginnings of learning about the poetry of the Nayanars. But this poem is for Lord Shiva, describing how Shiva's loving grace, present in the heart of the devotee, results in spiritual growth. Don't try to understand it. Just follow along and try with your heart to feel this poem. Reach deep inside to experience it, not necessarily process it with your reasoning mind. Open your heart. like a child experiencing something for the first time, without bias, without preconceived assumptions. Feel the meaning in this poem. And it begins. In love, thy servant's soul and body thrilling through, and melting all my heart with rapturous bliss, thou hast bestowed sweet grace beyond my being's powers. And for this I have no return to give. Thou art before, thou art behind, thou art the free, through all diffused. Thou first without an end. South Peru, Tari's Lord, O Shiva Peruman, Si Puram's ever glorious King. O King, the slave of thine own loving ones am I. Father, not soul alone, but body too, thou enterest melting, and with sweetness fill each pore. Thou dost disperse false darkness. O true light, ambrosial sea, whose clearness knows no ruffling wave. Shiva, who dwells in Purgatory's shrine, though thought unique, speaking what passes word and thought, teach me to know the way to speak of thee. It is my hope that this morning, as we talked about higher love from both Christian and Hindu perspectives, one is able to understand that love is beyond the materialism of our world. Love is patient, kind, not envious, not vindictive, not proud, not self-seeking, not easy to anger, and so on. Love requires non-attachment to material things like cars, houses, education, status, position, and power. It cannot be acquired only through austerity, studying holy scriptures, gift-giving, or ritualistic offerings. There must be a freedom from distractions, a going within oneself. In this way, even if we don't completely understand a poem that from Westerners comes from a completely different tradition, we can still experience through our hearts by simply listening to it. Feeling, not reasoning, its expression for that which is greater than our own selves and the material world, that which has been, is now, and will always be. Experiencing love, then growing in wisdom. Therefore, let us celebrate Valentine's Day by replacing attachment to the material with love of others, love of ourselves, but most of all, with love for that which is greater than us. For in so doing, our focus is not downward toward the material, but upward towards the spiritual. Om Namah Shivaya, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Amen.